is the executive director of our foundation. Kim is also the driving and creative force behind all that's going on with this centennial celebration, centennial campaign. She is, I don't know when she sleeps because I know that she is always on. So Kim, without further ado, welcome to our New Century Fund PowerPoint presentation. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you to everyone for being here today and for being part of this really historic and very important effort. Dov Benjamin likes to say, we're here today for this crisis, for this pandemic, because we were here yesterday. And that is so true in the area of endowment and perpetual annual campaign endowment. I mean, we have, I'll get to this in a minute, but because of the foresight of people who came before us, we have about $2 million in income that comes into our annual campaign from perpetual annual campaign endowments. That is literally paying for, mental health services and feeding the hungry and helping our teens with alternative programming and all the things that our federation is doing today is partly because of the endowments that were left by prior people. So as Barbara so eloquently put it, we are building more perpetual annual campaign endowment funds for the future, so that our community will be here to meet whatever both the good times and the challenges in the future. And as Barbara put it, this is literally that we, as all of you know, I can see lots of experienced people on this call. We've had, the Leicester Society and Loge for about 30 years or more. And it's been very successful in that. That's where our perpetual annual campaign endowment comes from, funds come from. But this is the very first time in our history that we are organized and going out and raising money and recognizing donors for leaving perpetual annual campaign endowment gifts up to 100,000. This is it. This is the first time, and it's so important. And I would only add up front our senior leadership, our major donors who are part of the both Jane Wilk and all the folks that you just saw are like thrilled beyond belief that you guys are doing, that Barbara is leading this and that you are doing it. And they're like, why didn't we do this 25 years ago? And we're like, better late than never, but we're going to do it. So everybody is super excited about this. So I'm going to just do some explanation of the, and just in broad terms, there's a centennial campaign. It's more than endowment. I'll get into that. This is all part of the centennial campaign. Those are most of those initial boxes that you saw. And then there's the centennial celebration. That's the mission and volunteerism and all those things. The celebration, we're raising the money in the first few years, and the celebration, including the mission, will come closer to our actual year in 2023. We're working on that now. Of course, we're trying to figure out if things need to be delayed, but it'll be more in 2022 and 23, these celebration activities, and we'll have much to celebrate. So what is a centennial gift? So for anything other than New Century Fund, that means that a donor has to give or increase by 100,000 in order to be a centennial donor. In other words, a Leicester member who had made a $150,000 request has to go up by 100,000 to become a $250,000 centennial donor. We add in the prior. So for everything but New Century Fund, which I'll get into in a second, you need, in order to qualify as centennial, you need to go increase or be a new donor by 100,000. That includes both perpetual annual campaign endowment. We're also doing some targeted endowment that's 100,000 or $1 million or whatever for, let's say, PJ Library or Israel Advocacy or Federation programs. All that counts, but that's 100,000 or more. Also part of Centennial, just so you know, is major supplemental giving of 100,000 or more. Okay, so people committing $100,000, it could be over a few years, to a particular program, the elderly or Israel Advocacy. All that is counting as Centennial, and those folks will be listed by level. We have 100,000, 500,000, million, 10 million and up. That's the I would call the major or the upper part of Centennial. New Century Fund is different. We are going to be recognizing all gifts only to perpetual annual campaign endowment. This is it. If it's targeted, we're not counting it. For donors of 10,000 to 99,000, that could be a bequest in your will. That could be cash. You love cash to endowment, but it's all going to the same place, whether now or tomorrow. It is all going to our perpetual annual campaign endowment funds. That spin-off income for our annual campaign each and every year in perpetuity. All of the New Century Fund donors will be recognized as Centennial in a big group listing.
Coming at one instead of two, so that's.
Sorry, I'm not sure if that was a question. And so let's go to the next slide. I don't want to, okay. So here is the Centennial campaign. This is our really, you start, you know, you're in when the early phases of a campaign, we have a best guesstimate of that we're going to raise 225 to 250 million. That's both legacy gifts and cash endowment gifts and cash today. How do we split up PACE, perpetual annual campaign endowment? There's and these are guesstimates. These are guesstimates based on our taking a close look at our donor base, gifts to date, our history. You make your best guess, and this may change as we go along, but this is our best guess as of today. Our goal is to raise a total of 75 million in total perpetual annual campaign endowment funds. That will get it. We have 50 million today and about a 45 million in future commitments. Those are living Lester Loge people. So this will get us somewhere to the 165, 170 million in total PACE funds, which will be incredible for our future. It will spin off, that kind of money would spin off, well, if it was 180, it would spin off about 9 million a year. So that a huge portion of the annual campaign. So just in very rough numbers, but how do we break that down? We're hoping for about another 50 million in pledges to Lester and Loge, in other words, bequests or life insurance or IRA beneficiary, the people, current Lester Loges and new Lester Loges committing 100,000 or more to be a Lester Loge. Then we're shooting for another 10 million in what we call living Lester and Loge. This is a new thing. Those are people who are paying it during their lifetime. We have several donors doing that right now, and we're trying to build that because obviously it's more beneficial to our community if people give during their lifetime. Some of those people are saying, I'll do a $100,000 Loge and I'll pay it, you know, over the next 5 years, 20,000 a year, that kind of thing. So that's all Lynn's committee, and also our Lester and Loge chairs are working on those things. And then in orange, of course, is this group. We are hoping to raise somewhere to 10 to 50 million. This is a huge, huge important part of Centennial from hundreds of donors, hundreds and hundreds of donors. So we'll get to that in a minute. And we already have beautiful gifts, 91, almost 100,000 secured to date, which is amazing. And then the other parts of the Centennial campaign are targeted endowment. That's endowments for day school education, for Jewish camp, for Israel advocacy, for the elderly, for all kinds of, for Israel, for even for our partner agencies, and those are our largest gifts to date. We have very significant gifts, so we've already raised about 93 million in that area, total goal of 150. And then targeted supplemental, that's giving today. Those are donors that that like to give, you know, large supplemental gifts today. These are the 4 areas. So as part of our Centennial, we're enhancing community today, even as we build tomorrow. Okay, so let's go on. So where do we stand? So this is new dollars raised since, and we're counting gifts commitments as of January 1st, 2019. So we do have, you know, about 8.6 million that have been raised in perpetual annual campaign endowment so far. Most of that is legacy, but some cash endowment.
Pick up the weights for profit.
Oh, well, here we could see, yeah. And about 3.5 million of it is cash. That's actually really good. We had one very large cash Loge gift. The targeted endowment area, we've got some very, very large future gifts in that area. And then we've raised some supplemental dollars. So then this will continue to change as we go along. But we've already raised about 100 million of the 250. 225 to 250. This is just a little history. This is kind of the sister committee. There's Lynn Harrison's committee, the PACE committee. That's the Lester and Loge. Just a little bit of history. Many of you on this call know this, but I'll review it. In the early 1990s, we were one of the first communities in the country, thanks to the foresight of the leaders at that time, including Floyd Shapiro, who I believe is, and some other folks who are on New Century Fund now. To go sit down and meet with Bill Lester and talk about how William and Betty Lester could help secure our future. That was literally one of the, we see it as kind of a normal thing that people will become, you know, a Lester Loge member and leave a gift in their will to perpetual annual campaign endowment funds, but that was new in North America at the time, and we were literally one of the first. So it's put us ahead of the game. We have about 247 Lester Loge, about 400 actually, if we count living and those who are deceased. That has created all those people who became, you know, Lester Loge members in the early 90s or beyond, and then those who passed away have left their funds with us. We invested our JCF. We have 50 million in PACE funds. That generates, I mentioned that, over 2 million a year for the annual campaign. So the largest single gift to our annual campaign comes from folks who are no longer with us, who've left legacies. And then, as I mentioned, we have about 45 million in future commitments. Those are living Lester Loge members who have made commitments to us. So I went through this already. We're looking to raise another 75 million. But New Century, the point is that New Century Fund is an absolute critical piece of this overall perpetual annual campaign endowment effort. Let's just go to the next slide. Just a little bit more background. This is something that we take a close look at all the time, and we call it the Lester Loge gap. It's really the PACE gap, the perpetual annual campaign endowment gap. So what's the difference between what a donor gives today and what their future commitment endowment would spin off in income? And there's a large, that's one piece of it. There's a large gap, right? Because a lot of people became, you know, let's say a Lester member back in the 90s, and their gift was, you know, $5,000, and they made a $100,000 Lester commitment. Well, that 5%, that covered their gift at the time, but then they've increased their gift and they haven't changed the Lester, or they haven't changed their PACE commitment. So now that donor could be a $25,000 donor, but the Lester commitment is still only $100,000. We call that a $20,000 gap, right? Because if someone has a $100,000 commitment, we figure 5%, that would be if that person passed away, that would be a $5,000 gift to our annual campaign, but this person is now a $25,000 donor. So there's a gap there between the person's gift as well as, and then what their legacy commitment would create in endowment income. The other major part of the gap, and this is a very big gap, is the major donors to our federation, 10,000 or more, about 350 of them who have no legacy. So that is a huge group that we're going to be talking to about Lester Loge. Some of them may become New Century Fund, and we'd be thrilled with that. But this is something that we think about all the time, and we see it because we have, you know, major donors who are passing away, and sometimes they haven't left us any legacy, or sometimes they've left the legacy. It's a beautiful thing, but it doesn't cover what their gift was. So New Century Fund is going to be a very significant way. We're trying to fill this gap both with people at the higher levels by saying, would you increase your Lester Loge? And then also at the lower levels by creating this whole new foundation of New Century Fund people who will, you know, hundreds and hundreds of gifts that will add up to a very significant portion of our future PACE funds. So I know it's a lot of numbers. I'm here to answer any questions, but that's,
Oh my God.
that's a very, very brief overview of where you fit in.
David Saginaw, thank you for coming. I feel honored to have you in our presence.
Funny.
And for all of you who may not know, or any of you who may not know, David is now the president of our Greater Metro West Jewish Federation. He was the incoming till a little while ago, but now we got him. And I can tell you, David and I go way back. Sometime when we're having fun, we'll tell you lots of stories. But even then, he was destined for greatness. So we're going to hear from David. Actually, David, go right now. We'll save Steve for right after you.
Okay, no, it's fine.
David Saginaw.
First of all, thank you, Barbara. So all of you get the context of this. Part of the reason why I'm so excited about this, our centennial, and you know, me becoming president is that Barbara and I, in 2001, I was the general campaign chair, and Barbara was the women's department chair. It was called department back then. And a lot of the people on this call go back a long way in terms of being in leadership positions and participating in what we do at Federation. So this whole effort is very exciting for all of us. And Barbara gave me 3 minutes. I'll take less, I hope. You know, I can't impress upon you the importance of PACE and Loge gifts and legacy gifts, but particularly PACE and Loge gifts to our UJA campaign. As was stated earlier by Kim, and I want to say it again, we raised a little bit north of $21 million in our most recently closed 2020 campaign. 2 million of that, 10% of it, okay, came from around 100 donors who are no longer alive, who created an annual campaign endowment so that their gift would be given in perpetuity each year. Think for a second, if we only raised $19 million, what we would not be able to do this coming year because we already had our allocations process. It's extremely important, and the conversations that you're going to be having with people about endowing their annual campaign gift more than likely is a conversation they've never had before with anyone. As a matter of fact, those of us who've been doing this for a long time know that the number one reason why people don't even consider a legacy gift is because nobody has ever had a conversation with them about it. So you're going to be the conduit for enabling these people to talk about their philanthropy, talk about their commitment to the greater Metro West community. You've got, I think it was 2,300 or some odd donors who have been giving over 25 years to our annual UJA campaign. So when you have these conversations with them, you're at a very good starting point because you already know a bunch of things about them. One, they lived here for a long time. Two, they're passionate about what we do in our community, about being a member of the Jewish community. And three, they express their confidence in the Federation. They express their love for the Jewish people through their annual campaign gift. And so having a conversation with them about being able to perpetuate that gift even when they're not here is just going to be, I think, a wonderful experience for all of you. And you're going to get the training on that and everything else. I just think, don't let the numbers be, overwhelming to you. We are going to accomplish this. And I think this particular New Century Fund is going to be a key to, if not the most money we're going to raise, certainly the most people we are going to engage or re-engage through their philanthropy and their love for this community. So good luck to everybody. I'm not going to be on for most of the rest of the call, although we do want to hear my partner in arms, Steve Levy, speak afterwards. So good luck with everybody. You've got a great leadership team, and I know we're going to go from strength to strength.
Thank you, David. And with your guidance,